Hi, I'm Mr. Milton, and today we're going to be talking about modernization in Japan from isolation to imperialism. Now, this is the thrilling conclusion of a three-part series on modernization, whether or not you should get rid of your traditional values or embrace new ones. I guess, you know what, that doesn't make any sense, but I think you kind of get where I'm going. Do you modernize or do you not? And what does that do to society? You saw what happened in China, the many times where they attempted to modernize and then things, well, did not work out. Japan is going to learn lessons from China and do things a lot differently. So join me, won't you? So this is Japan. Japan is an island nation in the Pacific Ocean. For much of its existence, for much of the time, it was very isolated. Um, in the era that we're talking about, they have done some trading, mainly over here with the Dutch. But we're about to see things start to get real. Well, we're about to see what happens when Commodore Matthew Perry rolls up with 4 warships. Let's see. Now, President Millard Fillmore said Commodore Matthew Perry. For you War of 1812 fans, yes, this is Oliver Hazard Perry's brother, which I can only imagine must be very difficult being Oliver Hazard Perry's younger brother, because he's Oliver Hazard Perry. For those of you who don't know who Oliver Hazard Perry is, he's kind of amazing, and I think he saved the United States. And so this is his brother. Anyway, he rolls into the harbor, Edo Harbor, with 4 black wooden ships and cannons. Interestingly, when they roll in, they actually shoot the cannon 73 times with blanks to celebrate the American Independence Day. But what it really did was shook everyone in Japan, who was thinking, like, what the heck is going on? Are they going to attack us? The goal that Matthew Perry has is to open up trade with Japan. And he's sent with a very nice letter from President Millard Fillmore. What's really weird about this is that pretty much during the time that he gets over there, Millard Fillmore is really no longer president. He was defeated in an election. So things actually get really interesting. Let's actually look at the letter, because it's interesting. So this is a letter from President Millard Fillmore to the Japanese Emperor. I have directed Commodore Perry to assure your Imperial Majesty that I entertain the kindest feelings towards your Majesty's person and government, and that I have no other object in sending him to Japan but to propose to your Imperial Majesty that the United States and Japan should live in friendship and have commercial intercourse with each other. Now, I imagine some of you chuckled at intercourse. In this case, of course, we're talking about trade, people. Come on. But ultimately, I mean, it seems by the tone actually a very nice letter, in which he's saying, yeah, hey, so you and me trading, how about it? Now, Matthew Perry puts an additional addendum on this letter. And so let's go read that. The intercourse between the 2 countries is so much more easily and rapidly than it formerly was. I imagine that's because of, the steam engine. The undersigned Perry holds out all these arguments in the hope that the Japanese government will see the necessity of averting unfriendly collision between the 2 nations by responding favorably to the positions of friendship which are now made in all sincerity. Do me a favor, pause me, and write down a translation of this. Go ahead. It's just the pause button. This is more. Many of the large ships of war destined to visit Japan have not yet arrived in these seas, though they are hourly expected, and the undersigned, that's Perry, as an evidence of his friendly intentions, have brought but 4 of the smaller ones, designing should be necessary to return to Edo in the ensuing spring with a much larger force. At this point, do the same thing. Translate this. At this point, you can probably see the change in tone. Uh, yeah, this is definitely different than what Millard Fillmore had in mind. And you can actually see that these four ships of war pulling up on the ship, pulling up on the harbor, was very frightening. This is a 1945 Japanese print in which you can kind of see the ships. And these are like jet black vessels that are just like hanging out there with cannons that they heard going off, and so yeah, it's kind of frightening. This is a Kyoka, which is a 5-line poem of the event. Awoken from sleep of a peaceful, quiet world by Jockeson tea with only 4 cups of it, one can't even sleep, even at night. Now, at this point, you might not have any idea what this says, but I have a translation, and it's really all about these ships rolling up. And here is the translation. The steam-powered ships break the halcyon slumber of the Pacific. A mere 4 boats are enough to make us sleep at night. People have seen what happened with China in the Opium War, and so seeing these ships really he's kind of saying that, yeah, open up or we're going to fight you. It's scary. It's really scary. And so ultimately he does roll back in and forces the Japanese to sign the Treaty of Kanagawa. 2 of the ports are opened to the United States. And foreigners, and this is similar to what happened in China and many other places, they were granted extraterritorial rights in Japan. This is going to be a source of anger and also a source of kind of like the Japanese are going to really make changes to make sure that these extraterritorial rights eventually go away. Again, what extraterritorial rights really mean is that we don't trust your country. Your country is backward. It is not. It does not have laws like everyone else, and so we don't trust your justice system. And so Japan's going to really start to modernize in order to make sure these things go away. Now, Japan before is interesting. It was ruled by a series of emperors. Although in this case, the shogun is going to become, which is the military leader, is going to become much more powerful. And they're really going to end up running the island. Japan was very much a feudal society, and so land is given to the daimyos in exchange for their loyalty. That's kind of how the system is, but that's not how the system's going to end up being. They are going to become much more Western in a moment. In 68, Emperor Mutsuhito took control from the shogun, and he's going to create the Meiji Empire. And I might have pronounced that incorrectly, and I apologize for it. But pretty much it means the enlightened rule, and he's really going to focus on modernizing and really re-Westernizing Japan. By 1912, Japan will have a highly centralized and bureaucratic government. So they modernize their government. A constitution establishing an elected parliament. So more like the democracy of the West, a well-developed transport and communication system, a highly educated population with no feudal class restrictions, an established and rapidly growing industrial sector based on the latest tech, and a very powerful army and navy. All by the end of his life. And so how he did it, it's interesting. He modernized. He realized that there's no way to get around the West, and so he did have to modernize. And so he sent emissaries to study the U.S. in Europe, and then he made changes about the nation based on those, which sounds so familiar because we saw it happening with the self-strengthening movement in China, where they do send emissaries out to go learn and then bring that back. And so, yeah, they do take the best of what they see from the Western nations, and they adapt it to their government or to their country. So Germany has a very strong centralized government, and they really like that. So they modeled it after. So they have a constitutional monarchy. They like the U.S. universal education system, so they developed the same. Germany does have a really thriving disciplined army, and so they model after that. And obviously Britain has really the best navy in the world at this point. And so, yeah, they model after those. They do build 7,000 miles of railroad. which is huge. The nation does become very connected, and I think these numbers are really telling here. So by 1875, they have what this is millions of metric tons of coal. So they greatly outproduce what they did in 1875, pretty much in all measures. Here, this is the number of steamships. In 1873, they have 26. By 1913, yeah, they have 1,500. And we are going to see them start to develop as good steamships as Germany, which makes great steamships. And so, yeah, they're going to become a powerhouse in the Pacific. They also process tea. They make silk production, and yeah, shipbuilding is a huge function of the government of the nation. What's great, and so so they modeled their laws after Western laws, which are modeled after Napoleon, by the way. In 1894, four nations ended extraterritorial rights. So Japan was finally, seen as good as the Western nations, and so that's a big boost of self-confidence. Now, how do you change society? It's interesting because you have to get rid of the feudal system, and so the lords and the samurais, who were historically in a feudal system, those people are they pledge their loyalty in exchange for a big chunk of land. Well, that's no longer the case. And so they're given a one-time large payments to ease the transition from the feudal society to more of a capitalistic society. The samurai who used to be traditional samurai, they had to dress more Western, and they could no longer wear their sword. This is an image of I like this image because it kind of juxtaposes both the Westerners and then the samurai, and you can kind of see the samurai in traditional wear. And then you have the Western samurai, the more modern samurai, and so they're wearing, more tight-fitting pants. They do still have swords, but they've definitely modernized quite a bit. How else to change society? They, instead of having feudal lords control the army, they create a centralized army, which makes sense. And they made it so everyone had to spend 3 years in it. They had a free education for everyone. They absolutely updated their infrastructure, which does provide work opportunities quite a bit. Initially, and so in order to jumpstart their industry, and this is interesting, the government ran all the industry initially, but then they sold them off to the private sector because they couldn't just all of a sudden, go from not having this, not having factories to all of a sudden having, free market economy. And so they really transitioned into it. It was a slow process, but they did sell them all off. And initially, the elite in society were able to, in parliament, but eventually all men got the right to vote in 1925, so it wasn't just the elite. And they do become imperialists quite a bit. In 1894, they win their first war against China. This is the first Sino-Japanese war. China did not send troops to Korea. Japan then destroys the Chinese Navy, and they get a piece of Manchuria. And this is going to start Japan's becoming an imperial power. This right here represents China, kind of slow moving. This is someone, Japan, which is a lot smaller, who just kind of defeated a giant. And then in 1904, they participate in the Russo-Japanese War. This again has to do with Korea. It seems like everything really has to do with Korea with Japan. Just Russia wasn't supposed to interfere with Korea. Japan launched a surprise attack on them. This is actually a huge source of issue with Russia because Russia gets defeated, absolutely defeated. They got trounced by Japan, and that's going to send shockwaves throughout Russia, and they're going to realize that they are not equipped for war at that point, and so they're really going to jumpstart their war mechanisms. This is going to lead to other things, including eventually World War I. Japan further increases its land in Manchuria. They also take Japan and they also take Korea, and this actually is it's still a bit of an issue. Japan sends advisors over and then ultimately takes over Korea. They replaced pretty much everything in Korea. They replaced their culture, their language with the Japanese. Um, and so that's going to cause a lot of resentment among the Koreans. They really do not like the Japanese. And there's going to be some other issues too, but um, that's kind of where this historic anger between Japan and Korea is. And we're going to see it develop during the World War II as well. Japan also, yeah, it becomes a major player, I mean, the major player in the Pacific Ocean. And they do attack China in 1937. China is going through a civil war at this point, and so Japan does attack China, which is called the Second Sino-Japanese War, which eventually gets rolled into World War II. So World War II, for my World War II fans, there's lots of like discussion on when World War II starts. World War II in the Pacific ultimately starts in 1937. I think we're going to do this in class. We're going to compare and contrast both China and Japan's experience, just because I feel like it's a really good activity to start to do some comparison. But I really like this image right here. This is, I think I found it on Wikipedia. But it kind of shows the expansion of imperialism. We're just going to watch it for a minute. You'll kind of see things. Yeah, 1938. So Japan is over here. So watch Japan grow when we get back to the imperialism during that time. Come on, 1550. Yep, we get bigger. Okay, they're not in Africa yet. Close. Boom. There we go. Watch Japan. Boom. And then, yeah. So we're going to talk more about this, obviously, when we get to World War II. But Japan's a really interesting case because, again, they not only embrace modernization, they really embrace imperialism. It's interesting. So that's it. It was nice to talk to you, and I will see you shortly. Stop.